Hi everyone, Christoph the Polish Geek, and welcome to another video game review, and a review of a DLC to Lies of P, which is called Overture. And that was such a fantastic DLC and so worth the wait, because I was a huge fan of the Lies of P game. Like, that game was my game of the year of 2023, even though it was not nominated for Game of the Year, but it was very much my game of the year. And ever since I knew that DLC was announced, I was so looking forward to it, and it's finally here, and it truly exceeded my expectations. Like, this DLC, Lies of P Overture, is just amazing, and it expands so much on the base game and enhances it so much. And basically, now I think if you are a first-time player to Lies of P, then you'll basically get a complete experience now with both the base game and the DLC, because Overture is a really perfect DLC. There is now a level difficulty add-on. Not sure if I'm fond of that, because difficulty is one of the major points of video games like that. Like, as I say, Lies of P is the only non-From Software Souls-like that you forget it's technically not a From Software game. But now, I guess it's easier to guess it, but that's not how it should be. I did try the easy mode though, and honestly, it's actually not that easy, thankfully, but that in turn I begin to wonder what was even the point of it in the first place, unless to troll gamers that beg for an easy mode. Whatever, thankfully, an easy mode isn't actually that easy. It's still pretty challenging, like you'd expect from the game. We were all told that the new story of Overture was gonna be a prequel, and it technically is in a way, but not in a classic way, because still technically you could argue that it's technically still part of the ongoing storyline, because technically Pinocchio and Jiminy go back in time and then play through the events of the past. I actually kinda predicted that's how they were gonna do that, and boy, I was right. I do really enjoy that story though. Even though it takes place in the past, it's clear that you're technically intended to play the base game first. The story of Overture does so many references to the base game, and clearly you are already meant to know all those things. Just as the base game, there is a clear narrative, though outside of Pinocchio himself, of course, and Jiminy Cricket, most characters are entirely new. Generally, Souls-like, especially the ones done by From Software, have little narrative and mostly just the lore to make you piece everything together, but while Lies of P no doubt also had plenty of lore, but there was also very clear ongoing narrative, and Overture very much keeps that in the past. The story is still very sad and bleak and perfectly fitting with the story of the base game. Plus so many questions that I'm sure we all had back when we all beaten the first game. Yes, we do get answers. One of my favorite things is that we do finally meet the real Alidoro, because we all know that the Alidoro from the base game was a fake one, but now we finally meet a real one, and he is as likable and as an amazing character as we all imagined him to be. Overall, I love the story of Overture, and I think it very nicely and logically ties into the story of the base game. Like in the base game, for example, there was a city of Krat and a petrification disease and hostile puppets, with plenty of lore and backstory surrounding City of Krat and the characters. In Overture, taking place in the past, we do see all that happening in full glory and how it all came to that, and it gives so much more context to the story, and it's just awesome to see so many events actually play out on screen. Events that are in the base game were only extensively talked and heard about, but now we do actually see them fully happening, and I really love that. This is like the type of story that you don't know you need actually until you experience it. Can't say the gameplay adds particularly a lot of new things to the table. It doesn't really. It still pretty much feels like an expansion of the base game, which it is technically, and I say that's actually a good thing, because instead of experimenting, the game very much keeps what worked in the base game and instead adds entirely new things that make sense for the DLC, which are mostly entirely new levels with entirely new designs as well as new enemies to that mix, because we're in the past, which means that we're still in the city of Krat, but this time in its full glory, and I love it so much. Like, you start the game at the Krat Zoo, which is stated to no longer exist in the present, but now you have new enemies in form of Kirkis gorillas, baboons, kangaroos, and a boss in the form of a giant crocodile. And then we enter a carnival, and the location is just as amazing, with enemies being classic Pinocchio puppets, albeit much more violent and aggressive. And of course, the more you think about it, the more you realize that the carnival is actually an original location from the base game, but back when carnival was very active. And Heb area is again Hotel Krat, but this time it's before the grand opening. I love it. It's very recognizably the same place with its layout and all, but obviously entirely new NPCs are here now, which obviously don't recognize Pinocchio. And some furniture is structured differently too, and plenty of it is also covered like it would be for a hotel that isn't opened yet. Really awesome attention to detail, and it's clear how much the care the creators approach to make sure it's recognizably the same place, but in the past and before the grand opening. Like, a place to upgrade your skill tree is now downstairs instead of upstairs in Geppetto's room, and a place to upgrade your weapons is still here, although without the lady, obviously. Another new interesting location in Lies of P Overture is the underground prison and laboratory, where the alchemists were actually doing their experiments, because in the base game we've been hearing a lot of information about the experiments and all that led to the whole situation in Krat in the first place. But now, in Overture, being a prequel, we see all those experiments happening, and they are probably even more disturbing than we're initially led to believe. And even among the new enemies are the mad scientist alchemists, at least that's what I call them. New bosses are excellent, especially the final one. We'll get to him soon, actually. They are still very challenging and also so unique and different from one another, and quite different from the bosses in the base game, but still very much fitting within the story and setting of Lies of P. I was admittedly hoping that we would actually get a terrible dogfish as a boss, but oh well, you can't have everything, and the bosses we did actually get, I say, are even better, especially the final boss. And even if we didn't get a terrible dogfish, we got actually a very different giant boss in the form of the Guardian of the Ruins or something like that. There was only one boss in this DLC that I did kind of hate, and that's Veronique. Like, when I finally beaten her, I was actually more relieved than happy, actually. Like, she just keeps fighting without really giving you a chance to hit or attack. Like, I say, she wasn't challenging, she was outright unfair, and I had to switch to easiest mode and still struggled for hours. Like,
forgive me. I did terrible things to you.
oh yeah, you totally did, like I struggled for hours with you. I hope there is a patch that fixes that boss battle. Another boss I initially actually felt the same way as I did about Veronique, and I do hope there is also a patch that fixes him, and that's Lumacchio, however it's pronounced, but he was also pretty frustrating, especially in his second phase when he turns to a carcass crab monster or something like that, and then he also just keeps attacking you without really giving you any chance to attack him. But at the same time, actually, once I started locking on to him, which is not something I generally do for boss battles, he became actually much easier and much more fun to fight, actually. While I still hope there is some patch to fix him, he was not as frustrating as Veronique, at least not once I started locking on to him. Of course I'm still gonna punish you, you bastard, like, don't think your begging is gonna have any effect on me.
How could you? You promised you would let me live! Please. Please, They promised. The alchemists. I must go to them. I must go to them. Get my soul! No. I was chosen!
Now we are getting into a spoiler territory because, as I said, I really love the final boss battle, and now I want to talk about it because I really love the choice for the final boss. I didn't take much thought into who might the final boss be in Lies of P DLC Overture. I just trusted the creators, but whom they did come up with is such an amazing idea, and I would never ever come up with something like that, and it's Arlecchino, King of Riddles, such an amazing choice. I figured they would have a great idea, but Arlecchino, of all people, would never occur to me, because in the base game there were all those phone calls from the King of Riddles and you had to answer those riddles, one of the most awesome parts about the game actually, and then when you finally discover the King of Riddles himself as nothing more than a wreck and learn his backstory, and that did seem a little anticlimactic, and even more so that from the backstory he seemed like the most evil character from the game and you kind of wish you could actually kick his ass. And now we finally get a chance to fight him in his full glory as a final boss, and the fight doesn't disappoint. It's really difficult but fair, and yep, they couldn't come up with a better choice for the final boss.
And who might you be?
Honestly, rarely do I say that DLC is particularly needed for the base game, but Lies of P Overture is very easily among the best ones, and it's clear that it was not done at the same time as the base game, but after it, which is exactly how it should be done. That way, you actually come up with a good idea and create something that's not necessarily essential when the base game releases, but once it's done and gets released of its own, then it very much enhances an already amazing game, and Overture is very much that. It very much now deserves to be put among the greatest DLCs, together with both DLCs for The Witcher 3, Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, as well as Elden Ring DLC Shadow of the Earth 3, or Dark Souls 3 DLC The Ringed City. I had a feeling that Overture would be a great worthy DLC, but it's even better than that.
Rest in peace. Wretched mind.
Lies of P Overture is one of those things that you very much want, but once it comes out, you don't realize you actually needed it. And what's more is that, as I said, I very much expected this DLC to be great, but I didn't expect something like that, and in all honesty, the DLC was actually quite different than what I expected it to be, but sometimes what you don't expect is better than what you would expect. Because, as I said, Lies of P Overture is truly better than anything I expected it to be. Lies of P Overture truly embodies what a perfect quality DLC should be like. Which is basically keep everything that made the base game fantastic, but also expand on the base game and enhance on it and all that. Like, yep. Overture is simply a perfect DLC, and by far one of the best ones. Like, if you could count DLCs as games of the year, then just as Lies of P, the base game, was my game of the year of 2023, Overture could totally be my game of the year of 2025. But either way, this was a truly perfect DLC that truly expanded and completely enhanced an already amazing experience, and I had such a fantastic time with it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that completes my full review of Lies of P DLC Overture. And please subscribe to this channel, press the like button, and I'll talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you then, bye!